Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the ATP Project with your hosts, Nic and Steve.
Hello.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
I'm great today.
Are you?
I am feeling really good today.
Oh, awesome. You look nice and sprightly, nice and tanned, actually. I was meant to mention that before.
It's kind of like, after a weekend, you're out in the sun. I love it.
Yeah.
Very good for your mental health.
It is very good for your mental health. Funny you should say that.
Why? What are we talking about today?
Well, today we are talking about mental health.
Jeez, what a segue.
We're talking about, but specifically nutrition for mental health.
Right.
So what we can do nutritionally and supplementally to help to, balance out our neurotransmitters and help to reduce the incidence.
And what's bad for our brain too.
And what's bad for our brain? Yes, what nutrition is bad for our brain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the word neurotransmitter, and that's a key thing in the brain. Now, a neurotransmitter is, remember you've got these cells in your brain and they're all separated, but they've got little chemical connections. And this is where all the medicines and a lot of nutrition work in the neurotransmitter area. So we're talking about things like dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, GABA, glutamic acid, and probably a million I've forgotten others. Acetylcholine. Did I mention that one?
You did.
No. Did.
Yeah.
So there's millions of those sort of chemicals. We can talk a lot about them today. And weirdly, they are nutritionally based.
They are. And, even up until fairly recently, it was still believed that anything to do with mental health was only to do with the brain, nothing to do with the gut. There was no correlation whatsoever. No. So we're going to prove today that the microbiome has a very significant impact on our mental health. Absolutely
it does. I mean, and also you are a treat. Now, our brain is very sensitive. We've got about 86 billion cells in there. So any changes to our nutrition can change our brain.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable.
Yeah.
From classic headaches to severe mental health problems is all affected by our nutrition.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. I mean, I've got some papers here and you've listed some papers here. They're absolutely remarkable, that there's certain things that can really screw with your brain that you wouldn't think.
No.
It's to screw with your brain.
That's right.
I've got things here with, we're talking about functional MRI studies that they watch what the brain does when you feed it certain things. And mental health, I mean, I'm going to ask you a bit of a dumb question here, but do you see much mental health in clinic?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but yes, I think probably 80% of the clients I see have some form of mental health issue, whether it's some anxiety, some low mood, things like that. So very common. And we have some pretty alarming statistics on the amount of prescription medications that are prescribed every year in Australia alone.
I know. If you're playing at home, have a guess how many prescriptions are written for mental health disorders. And I'm talking prescription drugs.
Yeah.
So these are the pretty severe people. Is it A, 1 million a year, 2 million a year, or 3, 44 million a year?
And let's just also say, maybe to the people overseas, what our population in Australia is what, 26 million, I think?
26 million.
Yeah. So bear that in mind when we give you the answer.
And it's 44 million prescriptions
per year.
Isn't that absolutely, I'm going to say crazy, but you know what I mean? It's scary.
Yeah.
And that's how many people. So that's almost 2 prescriptions per person, man, woman, child, infant per year.
Yeah.
I mean, something's going on.
Yeah, something is going on. So we're going to have a look at what might be going on for some people, and we can talk about, what I see in clinic, and we've got a lot of research papers, as you said. So we're going to dive in and talk about the microbiome and what we can do to help to rebalance that and how that can affect our mental health.
It's nuts. I mean, when you think about it, we know that depression, for example, which is the most common one prescribed, antidepressants, about 80% of the mental health stuff are antidepressants. It's not caused by a drug deficiency, is it?
No, it's not.
No, it's something else.
That's right.
Now, what can cause depression, and I mean the disease depression, like, my cat died a couple of months ago, I was depressed. That's not a disease. I didn't take anything for that because that's a completely healthy response. We're talking about depression that has no discernible cause like that. So this is a incredible disease process that's going on in the body. And I found some fascinating stats. Tasmanians are the most depressed people.
I know. That's surprising. My folks live in Tasmania. My mum listens to this. So.
Oh, does she?
And I know she's
Whereabouts
not
in Tassie?
Depressed. They live in, sorry, Mum, the north. They live in the north coast. Near Penguin. They live near Penguin. A place called Penguin.
I thought you'd know that. I thought, you'll know where your parents
I know,
live.
that's terrible, isn't it? No, and there's a giant penguin there. It's actually beautiful. It's on the coast. It's a beautiful place. So they live near there, and they love it. So I don't think they're depressed.
You don't have to be depressed, but about 1/4 of Tassie people are depressed.
Depressed, yeah. Maybe it's the cold weather. They need to move to Queensland. Although Queensland's second highest.
We're the second highest, yeah. I mean, possibly because of our ageing demographic. Everyone's older than me.
Yeah, and that's saying something, Steve.
That's pretty old. The older you are, the more neurotransmitter drugs you're on. And it was clear statistical correlation between age and mental health.
Yeah.
Now, that was, that's quite sad in itself. But there's some amazing stats here. If you're 10% of 12 to 17-year-olds have prescription medications.
That was shocking to me.
I know. I think back to when I was 17 or 16, I didn't think of anything except for girls, and that was it. It's like I can't imagine the problems of the world today being, that different. I mean, is it these things? That age?
Well, I think that has a lot to do with it. I think that probably social media does have a lot to do with it. The expectations that seems to put on young people. Perhaps that's it. It is a different world. I mean, when we were kids, Steve, we didn't have any technology. It was great. My mum used to throw me out the door. We'd get home from school and she'd say, get out until the lights come on, the street lights come on before you come home. So we just go play around in the streets.
Well, I didn't have a watch, so when the street lights came on.
No one could call you because we didn't have no
we used to play cricket at the nets at the local school till 9 p.m. in of course summer.
Yeah.
In Melbourne.
Yeah. We used to play on the road. And then when the car come, you'd run them off the road and then put them back out again.
Did you used to do that too?
Yeah, I used to do that. Yeah.
Oh man,
I'm that old as well.
Yeah, Victorian Street. It's funny because I go past that street now and I always look for the paint on it that he's painted a little bit where 22 yards was because we pasted out.
Yeah.
Scientific. But this is so something's going on today. And but there's things that drive depression that I wouldn't have thought of if I wasn't in this field.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit you with one. Antibiotics.
Yeah.
How does that cause depression?
How does that? Well, see, what we're going to talk about is our microbiome. Yeah. So just a quick overview, if you don't know what the gut microbiome is, basically it's just the environment that houses all our bacteria. We've got, some virus, some archaea is another type of microbe in our gut. Basically, it's just our collection of microbes within our gut. And that has a very strong connection with our brain. So we have something called the gut-brain axis, which I think a lot of people know about. So whatever's going on in the gut is definitely going to affect our brain. So if we're looking at antibiotics, well, antibiotics basically wipe out our microbiome for the most part. And then what generally I see happens is after antibiotic use, you can have a bounce back effect, but you'll get more of those inflammatory type microbes that will grow back. And we can talk about the chemical that they release when they die. Wow. So antibiotics,
You're going to talk about my favourite type of lipopolysaccharides, aren't you?
I love lipopolysaccharides, yes.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I find it incredible that the humble antibiotic that was developed 100 years this year, I think 1923, or was it 28, Pasteur? Can't remember. I was around. I was a kid then.
You were around, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that old.
You were running around playing cricket.
Yeah, I was playing cricket then, yeah. Oh, gee, that's I know that was way before the great age of Australian cricket. With Bradman, that.
Oh, yeah.
Bodyline
Bodyline, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do. I remember that. Jesus. Yeah, Bodyline and they were all the fast bowlers and they were all the girls. Used to love them.
Did they?
The Australian cricket team were they were all the go back then.
What about now?
No. I don't want to insult any cricketers, but I don't think it's quite as popular.
Mitch Marsh, she's hot.
I don't know. I don't follow it anymore. I only followed it because my dad used to watch cricket all the time. So
of course he did.
Yeah, the one days and then the test, Boxing Day test.
So give us a hot bowler from the 80s that you loved.
Oh my God.
When was DK Lilly?
When was he? Was he later?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know.
My age.
I don't know. I never took that much notice.
Shane Warne's passed away, but he's my age exactly. He would be 54 now.
Okay. Well, I didn't take that much notice.
Is he hot?
Look, I don't know. Back in the day, probably. Yeah. I don't know. Look, I wasn't into cricketers. I just was always. I was too young. I think I would have been only in my early teens, 13, 12 maybe. When I was having to watch the
cricket.
Boxing Day tests and things.
Wow, Boxing Day tests.
Sit through that.
Amazing.
Yeah. Anyway,
crazy stuff.
Yes, but antibiotics. So, and that can be one reason where we see a lot of prevalence of mental health issues. Another one, and this is another really commonly prescribed medication, proton pump inhibitors. PPIs, really common. Really, the amount of clients I see that are on PPIs is astounding. So a proton pump inhibitor basically is an acid blocking medication. So
can I put my chemistry hat on for a sec?
Please go.
Because I love chemistry.
Yes.
In acid is H plus ions. Okay, so they're hydrogen with an electron buggered off, and there's only one electron and one proton in a H plus. Okay, but if you get rid of the electron, it's just a proton. So protons are acid, basically H pluses. So if you stop them being pumped into the stomach, then of course it's an antacid. Now a lot of people get reflux, or GERD is a common one,
yes,
and they prescribe these PPIs. Now we talked about this a couple of years ago, but the incidence of stomach cancer increases 6-fold if you're on these things, and people take them forever.
Yes.
And they're on them all the time. So if you are going to be on these things long term, please check with your doctor regularly. You know, make sure it's like antibiotics. Don't not take them because you're worried about mental health. If you've got a kidney infection that's a bacterial, you may need them. We're not talking about that. These drugs are good. And when they're needed, but if they're overused,
I think they're supposed to be used for no longer than 6 weeks. I saw a client once that had been on one for 25 years.
Wouldn't
and
surprise
he
me.
had no nails, he had no hair, nutrient defificiencies, because it creates nutrient deficiencies for one. It creates significant dysbiosis within the gut, so bacterial pathogenic overgrowth, inflammatory microbes overgrow because you don't have that acid, which is antimicrobial. Natural antimicrobial. So
you could be sitting there eating lunch and you could slip in a bacteria in there. If you've got acid in there, it dies.
Yeah.
If you haven't, you're on a PPI, it gets into your small and large intestine eventually.
That's right, yeah.
Incredibly bad.
So that can be a major contributor to the depression and low moods and mental health that we're seeing so prevalent these days.
Yeah.
LPS, as we talked about, so lipopolysaccharides. So that's very common. So lipopolysaccharides, basically, it's part of some pathogens or they're proteobacteria within our gut. So they produce this compound when they die. So obviously they have a life cycle. Then when they die, they shed this compound. It's highly inflammatory. And that can then cause issues to our gut barrier, which we'll talk about the gut barrier function a little bit in detail with that as well. Can create a lot of inflammation within the body, systemic inflammation, because it can get into the bloodstream. It can impact the kynurenine pathway, Steve.
We better talk about that. That's a cool one.
Yeah.
So you've got this amino acid called tryptophan, which is an essential amino acid, and tryptophan can go two ways in your body. It can turn into serotonin. Or it can turn into quinolinic acid.
That's right.
And you got a choice. Now, if you've got inflammation going on with LPSs going galore, you've got bad dysbiosis, it will turn into quinolinic acid. What's quinolinic acid? It's not serotonin.
No,
so you get low serotonin in your brain.
That's right.
And that can trigger all sorts of things. Depression, and we're talking about that, but it can also trigger migraines.
Yeah. Well, it's neuroexcitatory. Quinolinic acid, and it's inflammatory to the brain. So yes, definitely. Screws
your brain. So you got to remember, in a migraine situation, you get low serotonin in your brain. So I know we're talking about mental health. It's a little bit related because low serotonin could cause depression, or you could be susceptible to migraines. And the drug treatment for migraines are triptans, which is serotonergic agonists. So it just artificially boosts serotonin in your brain.
Yes.
And that's, fine and dandy. But long term, it's incredibly bad. So getting to the cause of these things is incredible. But you mentioned quinolinic acid being inflammatory. You've got this chemical in your brain called calcitonin-genilated peptide, and that releases histamine in your brain. We talked about histamine in our podcast being quite bad, and it also releases chemicals that drive inflammation.
Yes.
So this is where aspirin works for your brain and helps headaches and hangovers that you'd know a lot of about, wouldn't you?
Oh, totally. Every weekend. No, I don't
bloody
drink alcohol.
teetotalers.
I know.
Look what I'm drinking.
Well, yeah, no, I got my water. You've got
look at this weird
concoction of whatever ATP products are in the kitchen today.
That is an ATP. That's exactly what it is. And you know what's in it? Creatine.
Creatine, there you
Good for your
go.
brain.
I think our creatine podcast just came out. So, yeah, you can go back and listen to that one of all the benefits of creatine.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm going to get muscly and lean and just been drinking this.
You already asked.
Yeah, of course. That's perfect answer.
Hang on a minute. I haven't got my glasses.
Yeah, don't put them on. Don't put them on. If I look good now, don't put them on.
Yeah.
So you've got all this sort of stuff going in your body. Now, what if you have a bad diet and you have, like most Australians, have low soluble fibre diet, you don't eat enough fruit and veggies, you get low levels of short-chain fatty acids. What's the go there? What does that cause?
Well, so when we talk about short-chain fatty acids, and particularly butyrate, it's one of the most, well, they're all important, but it's a very important short-chain fatty acid. So butyrate helps with the health of our colonocytes. It's anti-inflammatory. It helps to repair gut hyperpermeability, which we will talk about as well.
Wow.
And it keeps our mucous membrane nice and healthy as well. So, which is part of our lining of our gut, and it's fibre. So it needs fibre the bacteria that produce the short-chain fatty acids feed on fibre. So if you've got a very low fibre diet, you're going to have low short-chain fatty acid production. Therefore, you're losing your anti-inflammatory protection, protection of that mucus lining and that barrier function. So, and how many people do we know on low fibre diets? Western diet, very low fibre.
Well, the average Joe six-pack, with the terrible standard Australian diet is terrible for many reasons. One of them's low fibre. Now, it's like you and I love apples. I bought you an apple today, by the way.
Thanks, Steve. I know I didn't have an apple today, and I thought, Steve, I'll bring me an apple.
I'll bring you one. So I got you one there. So soluble fibres are incredibly important. Now, an apple, it's got the polyphenols in it, which help regulate the gut microbiome, and it's got the soluble fibre for the butyrate.
Yeah.
So an apple day, can be a good start.
Can keep a doctor away.
It can, absolutely.
The old saying.
I mean, this is remarkable. I mean, you've got all these sorts of, terrible sort of things going on in just your bowel alone. Now, in your clinic, let's say you go to your doctor and you've got depression because 44 million prescriptions are written for it. It's like, 30 million for antidepressants a year.
Yes.
That's more than the population.
It's
so
crazy.
People are getting multiple scripts.
Yeah.
On average, it's over one per person, man, woman, child. So what you're saying is that their depression could be something related to their gut.
Yeah, definitely. And when I see clients in clinic, I mean, I'm very gut focused. I love the gut. It's kind of more what I specialise in. So I will definitely always look at the gut, whether I do gut testing or whether we look into the symptoms that they're experiencing, because most of the time people with mental health issues are experiencing digestive issues, whether that be IBS or bloating or other issues. So I always look at the gut, and 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of dysbiotic issues going on there. Sometimes we can have other conditions, SIBO, things like that, which we can talk about. Yeah. But if I work on the gut, a lot of times it does improve their mental health. Yeah. So, what is that telling you?
What a great thing to start with. Before you're starting to, looking at prescriptions. And again, if you get a prescription, take it. Don't stop taking prescription drugs at all. But why don't we look at the gut? Why isn't it popular? I mean, you've quoted studies here. There's studies galore on this. I mean, isn't that a great place to start? Yeah. Here's an idea. Start eating healthy. Will it cure your depression? No, but maybe. Yeah. Can't hurt, might help.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we will talk about some strategies we can use to help to manipulate that microbiome and get a little bit more, a lot healthier. But, if you're straight away, if you're taking out your highly processed and refined carbohydrates, because the refined carbohydrates can feed particular proteobacteria, Klebsiella is one. Klebsiella is a big producer of histamine. Ooh. And we've talked about histamine in other podcasts, but histamine can create anxiety. So if you've got overgrowth of Klebsiella in your gut, you're going to be more anxious, or a lot of people are more anxious. So just removing those processed foods is a really good start to helping to reduce those more pathogenic bacteria within the gut.
I'm going to tell you something that's going to not shock you.
Okay.
The paper is called The Frontiers of Bioscience 2018. It says the impact of sugar on the body, brain and behaviour. And it was a pretty landmark paper. They did neuroimaging and everything on it. And guess what they found? You'll be shocked.
Okay. Shocking.
Sugar's really bad for you.
Is it?
Oh, it's shocking. But, it's like it is really, really bad for you. And the quicker release in the body, the worse it is. And they did brain scans and all sorts of things in this. I mean, so this is quite an amazing paper to some people that, they go, does sugar cause behavioural issues? Yeah, maybe it does.
Yeah, well,
it does.
I mean, and what's the gut connection there? It's feeding all those pathogenic microbes. It's feeding those microbes that are inflammatory, that are creating more LPS when they die off, of course, affecting the brain. So, yeah, just literally by taking out processed foods out of your diet before you do anything else can have a huge impact on in restoring your microbiome.
And this shouldn't be radical information.
No.
This should be I don't know, I can't think of one good thing that processed foods does for you. It's just not good for you from your, we could do a podcast on processed foods and the heart and how bad it is for the heart or for your kidneys, for your liver, all sorts of things. It's just bad for your nerves, it's bad for your eyes, bad for your everything, your blood vessels. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It causes diabetes. We've got over 1 million people with diabetes in Australia. It causes obesity. We'll talk about obesity too, but I want to hit you up with another one here.
Okay, go.
Non-nutritive sweeteners. There was a systemic review and functional magnetic resonance with non-nutritive sweeteners, and they found a pretty bad thing when it comes to non-nutritive artificial sweeteners. So it commonly involve brain regions where, like the striatum, the brainstem, the hypothalamus. So all these sort of part of the brain are adversely affected by artificial sweeteners.
Wow.
I mean, artificial sweeteners, and there's some natural sweeteners like Steve, which are actually good for you, they found.
Yeah.
But isn't that incredible that let's say you take the advice and you go, I don't want to have any sugars in my life. And you go, well, I'll just have an artificial sugar instead. That's not good for your brain either.
No, it's definitely not good for your brain.
And you've got to remember, you've got receptors in your brain called N-methyldeaspartate receptors, NMDA. And aspartame activates the N-methyldeaspartate receptors. And when you think of what that does for your depression and all that sort of thing, you've got to remember that one of the most powerful drugs you can give for antidepressants is ketamine. Now, it's a restricted drug. You get it in hospital, you spray it up your nose. Quite an incredible treatment. But that's an NMDA receptor blocker.
Yeah.
Okay? So, it's the other end of the scale that blocks that. But if you're activating it, overactivating it with artificial stuff, you're in big trouble. And you got to remember, people have this stuff every single day.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not uncommon to, if you see how much, it's in Diet Coke and these sorts of things.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's incredible.
It is awful.
And it's something you just got to be very, very aware of.
Yeah. Well,
now,
here I've got a good example for you, Steve, of how the microbiome impacts our mental health.
Wow.
It shows that the gut definitely is our second brain.
Yep.
So have you heard of fecal microbial transplants?
I have.
Steve? Yeah, okay. So this is becoming more prevalent now than it used to be. Basically, this is for people that have significant microbial damage, maybe C. diff, those pretty serious infections and things like that. They will transplant fecal matter from a healthy microbiome and to repopulate their own. So, but there was a study here done, and this was basically they were looking at, this is a rat study, so they transplanted fecal matter from a healthy person, but they were suffering depression.
Right.
And I've got all the stats here, but we won't go into that. But they were suffering depression. They put it into the rats, and so it was basically depressed patients transferred by oral garbage to microbiota deficient rat models. So they didn't really have much going on in their gut at all. Sterile guts, it showed that the recipient animals started developing anxiety-like behaviours as well as alterations in their tryptophan metabolism.
Wow.
So, and these rats didn't have an issue before. And as soon as they got that microbiome from the person that had the mental health issues, they started exhibiting the same symptoms. So what does that tell you about how strong a connection our gut actually has in mental health conditions?
Here's a weird statement, but depression could be infectious.
Yes, it could be infectious.
You could catch depression.
Well, here's something for you, Steve. This is just off my own back. I don't know if there are any studies around this, but they say that when you live with someone, you actually can develop very similar microbiota to them because you're touching the same things. You obviously bodily fluids, things like that. If you're a couple, if you're just
I'm married, so there's none of that.
There you go.
Anyway,
there's none of that. So you can actually start to develop a very similar microbiome. So if you're living with someone who's depressed, how often do you see people around them that are spending a lot of time with them becoming depressed as well?
And I mean, people just think, they just drag you down, but it's like it could be you could be transporting the microbiome over because there's microbiome in your mouth.
There's microbiome everywhere, on your skin, in your hair, on your face, everywhere.
And I occasionally kiss my wife.
Occasionally.
Not very often.
Poor Beck.
Poor Beck. I mean, it's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, that you can share the same bugs because we eat the same food. So
That's right.
There's absolutely incredible that this is going on, and it's like, wow.
So we really need to focus on our microbiome, and that's, like I said, that's what I do in clinic. I look to the gut straight away, and we work on the gut. Like I said, whether I do testing or not. But another thing that is really commonly found in people who have mental health issues is intestinal hyperpermeability.
Oh, okay. Now let's go back a step here. The old term that I was taught was leaky gut syndrome.
Yeah, leaky
now
gut
I've read
syndrome.
paper or blogs online that this thing is fake, it doesn't work. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
But now I read an article semi-recently that in the Lancet Medical Journal where they talk about it and the junctions and everything that's involved and low vitamin D causes it, blah. And it's like, where have you been because it's an old naturopathic principle.
It is. A naturopath would poo-pooed by the medical industry for the most part for saying there's leaky gut exists.
Yep.
And now the medical industry are now saying, yes, it does exist, but we don't call it leaky gut. We call it gut hyperpermeability or gut barrier dysfunction.
Oh.
So when we're talking about the gut barrier, so basically we're essentially a tube, from the mouth to the butt, we're just one long tube.
That's it.
Yeah.
About 32 feet of tube.
Exactly. And so the inside of our tube is actually the outside. So that's the outside world that's exposed to the outside. And so what we don't want when we eat is anything going from when we eat, go down the tube and actually escape the tube and get into our system, blood system. So if it does, then we can have a lot of issues, which we can talk about.
Yep.
But things that can cause that are microbiome changes. So anti-inflammatory microbes, as we were talking about before, so Klebsiella, Citrobacter, Proteobacteria, all those types of awful, those highly inflammatory
terrible
ones.
Bad things, yeah.
So they can cause that hyperpermeability. And what actually happens is we have a mucus layer. Behind the mucus layer, we have endothelial cells, and then we have things called tight junctions, and they're like little shields that basically all clip together, and they have micro gaps in them, like microscopic gaps. So that's when we say our gut is permeable. It has to be, because it allows nutrients to get into our bloodstream that are supposed to be there. If we have hyperpermeability, those junctions open up and they create wide gaps, and that allows proteins and things that we might take in through our gut to actually go into the bloodstream and create inflammation. So hyperpermeability, it can have a very significant impact on our mental health, because that inflammation is then becoming systemic and creating a lot of inflammation going to the brain. So it's
just and you got to remember that to say there's no such thing as leaky gut, there's still there'll be people listening to this that don't. You got to remember that the gut already leaks. You get proteins and water and everything. Of course, it goes in your body.
Yeah.
Now, is it that far of a stretch to think that some people's gaps are just a marginally wider that let things that may not go through just go through? If you have something like pick a drug, indomethacin, right? Which is a drug used to treat acute gout or arthritis. It's a very old one. I was on it, and what that does is that inhibits COX-1. Which is an enzyme in your body, cyclooxygenase 1, and that heals the gut. So if you stop the healing of the gut, you're going to get leaky gut.
Yeah.
And of course, you see it. The common side effect is ulceration, which is terrible disease of the gut.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense that these drugs, like the aspirin-based drugs, the non-steroidals, cause excessive leaky gut. That's just one drug. Yes, bad bugs, all sorts of things can cause it.
And it's funny with talking about gluten. So everyone laughs at practitioners that say, you've got to go gluten-free, and not everyone has to be gluten-free. But if you have a lot of inflammation, systemic inflammation, I generally, and particularly autoimmune conditions, which we'll be doing another podcast, we're going to talk about that. So what gluten does, it actually opens up those tight junctions, actually pushes them open. So you'll find a lot of medications have gluten in them to actually push open those tight junctions to allow the medication into the bloodstream.
That's remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you're somebody that's maybe has some immune issues or some inflammatory issues, and you're eating gluten, every single time you eat the gluten, you're opening up those junctions even more, allowing these antigens and these proteins and things going into the bloodstream where they shouldn't be, mounting an immune response, inflammatory response.
Yeah.
What's that going to do for your brain health?
Oh, it's just terrible. I mean, gluten. There's a book called Grain Brain, which I'd love to get that neurologist on who wrote it.
Yeah.
And he talks about how bad gluten is for your brain. And gluten for your gut is incredible, especially if you react to it. It's absolutely remarkable. Now I'm going to talk further about the gut dysbiosis. Yeah. There are some certain bacteria in the gut that make chemicals for your brain, like make GABA, make serotonin, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
What if they're absent?
That's right. What's going to happen?
Like imagine if you've got a GABA-producing microbe. GABA is GABA-aminobutyric acid, which is a sedatory thing for your brain. Yeah. You're going to be 100% anxious all the time. You know,
that's right.
Isn't that you know? So you're going to go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to prescribe a benzodiazepine for your anxiety. It's not a diazepam deficiency, is it?
No, it's not.
It's not the cause.
No.
I said it may get you through a rough patch. That's fine.
Yeah.
But what's causing your anxiety? If you're anxious about a test coming up or an exam or doing a podcast, if you get anxious about that, yeah, absolutely, that's the cause of it. But if you're just generally anxious, it could be your microbiome. Yeah,
definitely. Well, we know that our microbiome does, the bugs in our microbiome do produce some of the neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, as you said. So, and it isn't actually that the serotonin in our gut is actually going up into our brain, but those bugs that are producing those neurotransmitters is then sending chemical messages up the vagus nerve, which we haven't talked about, which is sort of our connection between our gut and our brain, up to the brain. So then letting them know we need more serotonin. So if you don't have those microbiome to produce that serotonin, you're not going to get that that message up to the brain, and therefore, yes, you are going to have those issues. So go.
I've got to tell you about it.
I've got so much stuff on my face. I know. Like we just got to.
I know you mentioned vagus nerve. I spoke to my father-in-law who does part-time surgery. That sounds dodgy, but he assists in surgeries a lot.
Yeah.
And he was telling me about an old surgery where for people with anxiety and that's the thing, they cut the vagus nerve.
Wow, really? Yep. Oh my God, that's terrible.
But you think about it, if you've got a terrible gut and you cut the vagus nerve, you cut that information off.
Wow. Yeah, so the vagus nerve, it's the 10th cranial nerve in the brain. It's the longest one. Yeah. And they call it the wandering nerve sometimes because it wanders down and it sort of basically has contact with the heart and then the gut, and it sends messages all the way back up to the brain. That's kind of it's sort of like your...
It goes one way, but it also mainly goes the other. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's back and forth. So
imagine we did a podcast on it.
If you cut that, oh my God, what's the implications of that?
Well, you'll improve if you've got a terrible gut. but it's not... I'd rather treat the gut.
Yeah, definitely.
Call me an old naturopath.
Well,
I am.
You are.
I'm old.
You're an old naturopath, Steve. Call me an old naturopath.
Call me, yeah. It's funny because like, when I started studying naturopathy and they said, all diseases start in the gut, I thought that was a load of shit.
No,
sorry if I swear.
I love saying that. That's my favourite saying because I believe that's the case.
I know it's the case now.
Yeah.
But a story I've told before is about, my situation where I had a gut bug that drove arthritis. And we're going to talk about this in another podcast. And my sore back has got to do with bugs in my gut. I couldn't logically make you've got to remember at that time, pre-naturopathy, I hadn't studied naturopathy, but I was a scientist.
Yeah.
I was a qualified. And so you look for connections and I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And it's just because I was blinded to it.
Yeah, that's right.
So
well, it's not taught in that industry.
Oh,
so, you're not...
nothing nutrition was taught in the chemistry and physics double major from Swinburne University.
No.
But, we learned about chemicals and that sort of thing and how the universe worked in physics, which is absolutely fascinating. But it's funny that what we know is that, the human body is connected to the universe. Sounds very esoteric. I remember reading that in naturopathy. But
it is.
Your blood is made from hemoglobin.
That's right.
Heme, iron. It's made from the ferrous. Guess where iron's made? Inside stars.
Is it now? I didn't know that.
Oh, didn't you?
I was going to say the Earth.
No. The Earth's,
we're well-star, aren't we?
The Earth is about 80, 60%, something like that, iron. So it's mostly iron, the Earth, because the iron core in the middle. Yeah. And that's why you've heard of magnetic field?
Yes.
That's because the Earth in the core, we're spinning and the core is moving. And when you get metal moving, you get magnetic fields. That's what's causing our magnetic field.
Yeah.
And that's why our atmosphere stays there because we've got a strong magnetic field. Mars, with the shitty iron content, it's still got some, but it can't form that magnetic field. But iron is made inside stars. Our star that is up there now is cooking away there, but it's making iron. It's mainly hydrogen now, and it's turning into helium. And then helium turns into, and it gets heavier right up to iron, and then stops.
Wow!
So iron, and the star that blew up that created our Earth and that before, because that star's a second generation star, made all this iron. So that's why we're iron beings. You know, we've got iron in our blood. It's essential for us. So you know, we're super duper connected. So just thinking about that in the gut and the brain, you can see that, you know, the gut and brain are linked because you've got a big fat nerve that does that. But thinking how linked we are and sounding a bit esoterical, and I'm not an esoterical type person.
You're not, no.
We're very
logical.
Very logical. But that logic is completely linked. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, definitely.
It makes calcium that's in our teeth and bones.
That's right.
That's what stars make.
That's right.
Yeah. And when they go supernova, they make heavier elements like gold and stuff. So we could hang around and catch that when if a star
Just tell me where to be and I'll be there with my bag. Catch the gold.
Probably Antares would be the next star that goes supernova.
Okay, well, just let me know when that one.
100,000 light years away. So
okay, we won't get there in time now. I'll probably be gone by then, So what's some other nutrients that the gut microbes produce, Steve, that can be implicated in mental health that we need for our nervous system function, brain health?
B vitamins, of course.
B vitamins, yeah.
You know, now you talk about nervous system and Beck, my wife, that we talked about earlier, for me kissing occasionally. She works in the hospital and she sees a lot of diseases where people are very sick, obviously. And you can see things like Korsakoff, which is a neurological disease, which is a severe deficiency of vitamin B1.
Yeah.
So she puts them on a banana bag so they get their cognition back. But, you know, that's a severe deficiency.
Yeah.
So you could have an insufficiency and have mild neurological impairments.
Yeah.
And I mean, just imagine if, as you age, you know, your B vitamins levels drop because you don't eat as much and the absorption and everything plays in. You could become mildly deficient in B1 or the others and you get mild cognition. Everyone thinks, Alzheimer's.
That's right. Yep.
And then you go through the doctor and the doctor says, yes, you've got mild cognitive impairment. We'll start you on some acetylcholinesterase inhibitors, some drugs. You could have B1 deficiency.
That's right.
You could have dysbiosis in your gut.
Exactly. You're not producing enough. And, you know, it's what you need B vitamins for nervous system function. So then if you're not getting that as well, then you sort of cortisol can be a little bit out of control and then that can impact the microbiome even more. So, you know, B12 is a little bit different. You know, intrinsic factor helps with that, but we have a lot of people with B12 deficiencies. But your B vitamins are very important for neurotransmitter production. So if you don't have the microbes in there producing those Bs, again, that's going to impact your mental health. So many connections to what our bacteria produce. I'm not going to say so many things I want to say, but we are doing another podcast on the gut, so I don't want to go into too much detail about the microbiome and all the things. But as far as mental health, we really need to look to the gut, in my opinion. And as I said, I find so much benefit when we're doing gut work with people who do struggle with anxiety, depression, that type of thing. So,
people might have heard of depression and serotonin.
Yes.
But did they know that 90% of serotonin is made in the gut?
Yeah.
I mean, this is remarkable. Yeah. Just stop there for a sec. That's remarkable that we don't consider the gut when it comes to mental health.
That's right.
And, you know, I have spoken to psychiatrists and psychologists and neither of them address the microbiome.
No.
Doctors don't address the microbiome.
No.
It's a thing that's there and it does something, I'm sure. They might think it helps with digestion. And I've spoken to my father-in-law, Dr. Doug, about it. He's been a doctor since I was born.
Oh, my God. So he's even older than you, Steve.
Just. No, he graduated in 1969, so that's when I was born.
Oh, there you go. I
was born in the summer of 1969. I was.
I know.
1969.
I know. Go for it. Sing the song.
I got my first real 16. Jeez. God.
Yes. And look, I who hasn't had some sort of close friends or knows someone personally who has mental health issues? And obviously 44 million prescriptions per year, the gut I don't think is being looked at. And let's just say there is a lot of situations where the prescription medication is needed, but why can't we look at the gut at the same time? And then perhaps those medications may not need to be so high or they're more temporary, things like that. So we can talk about some of the sort of strategies that we can use to help to repair the gut somewhat.
I think it's absolutely. We've got to talk about fixing this thing.
Yeah.
And I've got a paper here and it's titled Brain Foods, the Role of Diet and Brain Performance and Health. And it goes into all the sort of healthy foods. And it's really amazing because the same foods that are good for your brain are good for your heart, are good for your microbiome, good for... So okay, let's say I'm coming to see you. I've got health issues, I want you to give me a nice overview of a really healthy diet. I'm super compliant. I've got all the money. What's the optimum? What sort of things should we be eating for our brain health?
Well, I mean, this is an oldie but a goodie, and there's no research has actually got to the point of saying that this isn't a good diet. The Mediterranean diet, I still say, is one of the best diets for a lot of health conditions.
Yep.
Mental health conditions, definitely, because it's high in fibre. It's high in omega-3 as well. So omega-3s, and we can talk a bit about those, really important for mental health. So lower in red meat. So nothing wrong with red meat, but we do consume a lot of red meat in Australia. So I would say that's probably one of the best diets. Funnily enough, there is another diet that they use and have a really good research and really good results with using a ketogenic diet.
Ketogenic diet,
which is very interesting, I find, because obviously we're talking about feeding our microbes with fibre. Fibre is really important. That's sort of the basis of everything to feed our microbes, get our short-chain fatty acids and things like that. So why does a ketogenic diet work so well? Because it's very low fibre, it's high fat, and high fat can actually cause LPS release, there's bacteria. This is just my personal opinion on this because I have seen it worked really well for people. So I think that a lot of times we have obviously these really inflammatory microbes within our gut, as we're talking about, and what a lot of them feed on is processed foods, highly refined carbohydrates, things like that. So they're taking out all those processed foods, all those carbohydrates. So they're starving off that bacteria. So of course they're going to feel better. But how many people have you heard say, "Oh no, I don't do so well when I'm not on the ketogenic diet anymore"? You know, so every time I go off it, all my symptoms come back. Is that because of the diet, or is that because those microbes, they don't actually die off? So they'll just go into hibernation until you feed them again, and then they'll come back. So if you're not looking at the microbiome and changing that microbial balance, then of course every time you come off a ketogenic diet, you're going to have that issue. But ketogenic diet can work quite well in the interim for some people, but you have to work on those microbes, underlying microbes, and fibre is the key to feeding them.
Absolutely. Funny, I've seen a paper on the ketogenic diet and the mechanism by which it works for epileptics.
Yes, so that's very interesting.
Can I take you back to 1923?
Please do.
All right, 100 years ago.
Yes.
I was only young. But there's the ketogenic diet was used to treat refractory epilepsy, which is the severe stuff. And they now think it's due to the impact on the gut microbiome. So you're 100% correct.
Yeah.
That's for epilepsy.
Yes.
I can't imagine it not being the same for any other mental health.
Yeah.
But isn't that remarkable? And also the ketones that are produced, hydroxymethylbutyrate is extraordinarily good for your brain.
That's right.
And you've got these brain cells, they're astrocytes, they thrive off this sort of stuff. Everyone thinks your brain needs sugar.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. If you went on a completely sugar-free diet like, what's his name? Dr. Jordan Peterson. Have you seen him?
I know of him.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is public, so he's quite a famous author, and he's a psychiatrist with a doctorate, a psychologist with a doctorate, sorry, and very smart. He's on YouTube all over the place, and he talks about getting your life together, basically. Extraordinarily insightful, very intelligent man. He eats nothing but beef. Nothing but beef.
Wow.
Now, he used to have severe mental health problems. He was addicted to benzodiazepines. He was, going through a rough period. Now, that's a sort of, I'll call it, it's a carnivore diet. But that remarkably turned around his mental health. And now he's thriving on it. Now, is that for everybody? No.
No.
But it just shows you the impact of diet.
Yes.
And he got himself off all the medications he was on. Yeah. And now he even says, I wouldn't recommend it, It's boring and all this sort of stuff.
It'd be hard.
But,
Yeah. Well, apparently it's 33% of the time it works. 33% of the time it works for a little while, and 33% of the time it doesn't work at all. So that's why I think it goes back to your microbiome. So what is happening if somebody who has some mental health issues tries a ketogenic diet and it has no effect? I think we've got to look more at the microbiome and what bugs they have there compared to, say, that doctor that maybe had a lot of those really inflammatory bacteria that thrive on, like Klebsiellas thrive on your carbohydrates and things like that. So he's not feeding those anymore. So it just depends. It comes back to your gut and what's going on for your gut, because everyone's gut's different. So what works for one doesn't work for another. But, yeah, ketogenic diet can be amazing for some people.
Oh, yeah.
But if that doesn't work for you, I'd be looking at something along the lines of a Mediterranean diet. So that fibre is really important. So, we can get that through our legumes and we can get the different types of fibre. We have to look at those as well. So soluble, insoluble, resistant starches, even polyphenols, really important to feed that microbiome.
What are polyphenols?
Polyphenols. So they're the chemicals found on the outside of your berries and like those dark fruits, bitter peels and things like that. And they're very good at helping to help balance the microbiome.
Yeah. I mean, it's all the good stuff in fruits and vegetables that whatever I've read and if we're doing a topic on, I mentioned cardiovascular disease before, it's going to be the Mediterranean diet. It's going to be the polyphenol-rich diets. It's going to be the healthy fats. It's going to be the fruits and vegetables. It really goes across the board that these are the sorts of diets that you need to get onto. Even if you've got autoimmune diseases, these sort of diets you need to go onto. It's remarkable. I mean,
you go, oh, my God, we haven't even gone through half of these papers, Steve.
Oh, I've gone through half of them. I've gone through 3.
Okay.
Out of the 5. So I know we're running out of time, but I mean, there's also nutritional supplements for the brain that I've got a paper on here called Nutritional Supplements for the Brain. And it goes, it talks about things like omega-3s, polyphenols. Yes, it goes into herbs and we weren't going to talk about that sort of thing too, but, but mainly polyphenols. And things like caffeine and these sort of things that we haven't talked about, but they are very beneficial for the brain in certain circumstances. Caffeine, it blocks adenosine, so it gives your brain a bit of a lift, which is, what we need. But they really talk about, in this particular paper, the health benefits of polyphenols via the gut microbiome.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so get your polyphenols into you.
Eat like a rainbow thing, so colourful foods.
That's right, yeah.
We've got this great greenery at the back we were talking about earlier.
How great is it? All
these sort of plant foods, because these plants... you look at this plant, probably off camera. You see these broad leaves on this plant. They're exposed to the sun all day.
Yeah.
It's 12 hours a day, sitting out there. Right now it's sunny and there's plants there thriving in it, okay? And they're protecting themselves from the free radicals by making polyphenols.
That's right.
We eat those polyphenols, beneficial for our gut microbiome, helps our brain dramatically. Sure, good for cancer and heart disease and other crap we're not talking about, but it's good for your brain.
Yeah.
And and this is what we need to talk about getting more of those things in our diet and less of the colour white.
That's right. Diet. Yeah, the old white diet.
The white diet.
Yeah.
Oh. And you got to remember the average Australian, and when I was younger, I would have Weet Bix and milk for breakfast. Brown and white with sugar, white sugar.
Yes, so did I.
Sometimes brown sugar.
And I'd put the sugar on top. It was a little bit dry, and then it'd go crunch. You get the crust on the top of the Weet Bix.
It's like I can't even. I just can't. I used to have, and if my sister's listening to this, I used to have a mixing bowl because I'd have 10 Weet Bix in there.
Oh my God, I'd have 2.5.
Oh, you lightweight. 10 Weet Bix.
Wow.
Isn't that disgusting? Sometimes I'd have a whole row, which was 12.
Oh my God.
Just a massive eater of a teenage boy, running around like an idiot.
Yeah.
Eating that sort of thing. And that was daily. And then I'd have a sandwich for lunch.
Wow,
ham and
pasta
cheese.
For dinner or something?
Well, yeah.
Western diet?
Yeah, but we'd have mash and meat for dinner. But this was like a healthy diet back then.
It was back then.
And it's like, and you got to remember people that unfortunately you see in clinic be my age and this is what they grew up on.
Yeah.
And it's when I was in practice and it was, not having got the experience you have, but people they come in and they'd be quite sick, heart disease or whatever, obese, and they'd say, oh, but I've always eaten this way. And it's like, well,
why are you here then if it's not affecting you?
And we have to talk about one thing here, and there's some studies on this here too, is the impact of obesity on our mental health. It's sort of like a topic on its own.
Yeah.
But it's quite remarkable that being obese is extraordinarily bad for your mental health.
It is. Yeah.
If I put on a lot of weight now, I would get higher levels of estrogen, which would just screw with my brain.
Yeah.
Women with the PCOS, they tend to get more testosterone, which screws with their brain. Mm-hmm. So you got to remember, we've also got to get a healthy weight gain. The great thing is, broken record time, those plant foods are brilliant for normalising body weight. Yeah. The Weet Bix and milk, bad for your weight.
Bad for you. Yeah. So there's some particular prebiotics. So prebiotics is what we're looking at, polyphenols, prebiotics, that have had some really good studies around those and mental health. And some of these have come from an amazing practitioner called Dr. Jason Horolik. He's an amazing gut man
Loves
in
the bells.
Tasmania. Yeah, love him. So
Is he Tasmanian?
well, he's from Canada, but he lives in Tasmania, and I bet you he's not on any antidepressants.
I hope not.
No. So here's some really good research around FOS and GOS. So fructooligosaccharides and galactooligosaccharides.
Yeah.
They're types of prebiotic fibers.
Yeah.
So FOS and GOS together, there was a study done. So putting those together attenuated acute stress-induced corticosteroid release and inhibited the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines, interleukin-6, TNF-alpha, and it also reduced depression and anxiety-like behaviours. And that's just FOS and GOS together.
Just soluble fibres.
Just fibres. So how amazing is that? So, and very easy to get. I do use them in clinic in supplement form for some people who can't.
What foods had FOS in it?
So FOS would be asparagus, beetroot, blueberries, Brussels sprouts, butter beans, cashews, chicory root, fennel bulb, garlic. GOS is a lot of the beans, a lot of your legumes.
And again, broken record time, they're good for your body.
Yeah.
They're good for your brain. They're good for your gut. They're good for absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Isn't that remarkable?
Amazing, isn't it? So, resistant starch is another really big one. Very, very good for actually helping with butyrate-producing bacteria.
That's the
beneficial one. So your cooked and cooled potatoes and rice, they're good. Green banana flour, PHGG, partly hydrolyzed guar gum, I use quite a bit in clinic as well.
I didn't even know what that was when you said it.
Yeah, so that's a very...
Dropping some big letters today, aren't you, with your FOSses and GOSses?
I know, that's a very good butyrate-producing prebiotic, very good for constipation as well.
Great. PHGG. What is that one?
So your cassava root, your rolled oats, taro root, they're all your resistant starch type foods as well. And then, of course, we have probiotics as well, and there have been some really good studies on probiotics that are particularly good for mental health. There's a term called psychobiotics.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, so they're ones that actually help to best.
I just love the name. I don't care what they are.
I know, psychobiotics. Are they going psycho or are they helping this?
Lactobacillus plantarum 299V strain is a good, probably psychobiotic. Oh, I love that name.
Yeah, I know.
I've never heard it.
There's some really good ones. So targeted probiotics, I use a lot of targeted probiotic therapy in clinic. So obviously probiotic research has come a long way.
Yeah.
So it's not just a matter of grabbing one from the off the shelf, because sometimes there might be strains in there that you may not do well with. So somebody who does have, say, a lot of histamine producing bacteria in the gut, and they go and grab a probiotic bottle off the shelf and it's full of lactobacillus strains, that's going to actually make them worse.
Wow.
So you want to do very targeted approaches. So your bifidobacterium are very good. You want to have good levels of bifidobacterium. They help produce a lot of your Bs, your B vitamins and things like that. And they're very anti-inflammatory, so your bifidobacteria. So, so it's targeted probiotics, Mediterranean diet, as I said, omega-3 supplementation, really important. Get your gut looked at if you are having issues with depression or anxiety that you can't, gauge where it's coming from.
I find it remarkable that the research on this and Nic, you're in practice and 80% of your clients have got mental health issues.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It is.
It is huge. And the fact that nutrition can do so much for your brain, and it's so overlooked by most general practitioners and most specialists. And I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
I know, my wife works in a hospital where they give, now you're snorting ketamine.
I know people do that for fun.
Oh, do you?
I know of.
What?
In the past. But now they're doing it as a therapy.
Oh, you were a musician too, were you?
No, I mean, I didn't. No. I can say that 100%. I never did, but I have heard of people that did stupid. I don't know if they snorted it, but
no. But this is a nasal delivery of ketamine.
Yes, we talked about nasal delivery of medications in another.
Absolutely,
it's becoming quite popular, quite prevalent. It's very effective.
Yeah, well, the earliest triptan for migraines was sumatriptan. It's poorly absorbed orally, so you snort that up your nose, and that gets rid of migraines quicker, like almost straight into the brain. But ketamine is like the new thing. So especially S-ketamine, which is a type of ketamine. But remarkably, that these severely depressed people that are non-responsive to these, antidepressants, could be something to do with in all this scientific paper that's lobbed in front of you. You're listening here, you can't see all the papers, but literally the table is wallpapered with studies on nutrition and mental health.
Yeah, and if you are on some medication for mental health and you can't get it under control, look at the gut, look at your diet, look at reducing your trying to take out all your processed and refined foods, and look at bringing in some good omega-3 foods, your fatty fish, things like that, walnuts, which we didn't talk about, really good for the brain as well.
Walnuts, and I've got paper on nuts here. I love my nuts. Look, that didn't sound good. I love eating nuts. No, that sounds worse. You know what I mean? I love consuming.
Well, let's just say walnuts have omega-3 in them. So that can be
it's good. This paper is titled Beneficial Effects of Walnuts on Cognition and Brain Health. And it just says, look, you just got to eat this stuff. And from Alzheimer's disease, it talks about beta amyloid plaques to all sorts of things. It also has a side effect. You know, love the side effects. It reduces Parkinson's, stroke, depression, and cardiovascular disease, and type 2 diabetes reduces. Wow. That's a side effect. So there's a lot of side effects related to food, and they're all positive. All positive. Anti-inflammatory, reduce oxidation. I mean, this study, it really is nice. I mean, and you love these nice little graphs here.
I love the graphs, I love the graphs.
This is from Nutrients 2020, and it just says it gets rid of free radicals, reduces inflammation, reduces plaques, and just great for neuroprotection. So, it really is good. So get into your healthy nuts, because they're full of polyphenols too.
They are, They are definitely.
And
so
part of the diets and all the healthy diets they're great for. So
get onto that. Get onto your diet. If you're having some, even if you're not having digestive issues, and that's the other thing I didn't mention, I see a lot of clients with mental health issues that don't have any sort of digestive symptoms, but we look at their gut and there's always something in there that's contributing, and then we work on that. So work on getting your microbiome back in balance. Any inflammatory microbes, get them under control. If you've got any intestinal hyperpermeability, you want to address that as well. Get onto your pre and prebiotics, polyphenols definitely, and change your diet, and that, see how you go with that as in your mental health, and definitely should have a positive impact. I see it all the time in clinic.
Geez, that's brilliant.
And if we can reduce the amount of prescription medications that are being handed out, then, that's a good thing. And we can do it just by diet, then, wow.
And the side effects, beneficial.
Yeah.
Side effects of antidepressants for men is impotence.
Yeah.
It's one of them.
There's some awful side effects.
Well, that's the worst one. I'd stop the reading now. I'm not taking this.
That's going to make you more depressed.
It's quite good. Oh, in women it causes sexual dysfunction too. But it causes, it has side effects.
Yeah, it does.
So you've got to consider alternatives and look into it. Don't go off the medication you're on without your doctor thinking, we've got to say that, warning.
Definitely, But what you will find, if you change your diet and you start to work on your gut, you'll find that obviously work with your doctor, you may need less and less of the medication as your body rebalances.
I love it. And they can see you if they need help with a naturopath.
Yeah, they can see me.
Because you're in practice.
I am in practice.
You're still in practice, eh?
Yeah, I am, man. Busy.
Wow, you're busy. You're booked out for a few weeks, aren't you?
I am booked out, I think, a month ahead at the moment.
Shit.
A month or 5 weeks,
See, that's remarkable.
Yeah.
It's funny, there's someone I'm seeing, that wanted to talk to me, and I'm going to refer him to you too, because you're smart.
Well.
No, this is great. This has been great. We'll time's up now, but
hopefully
Luke, this has been
some good info for people to take away and put into practice for themselves.
Absolutely, and you can take charge of your own health.
Definitely, and that's one thing. Do take charge of your own health. Don't put it in someone else's hands.
No, it's so important.
Yeah.
That's so important. And look, we haven't even mentioned the exercise and the mental health. We haven't mentioned, because it's not the top podcast, but that's good too. And that's part of a healthy eating, part of healthy everything, hygienic sleep, all that stuff that we're not talking about today, but
we'll talk about that in the next one.
Absolutely.
So keep an eye out for that one. Ear out, eye out, whatever you're listening, or watching.
Yeah, watching, listening. Please listen, because I'm not that good looking.
Yeah, no.
Nick's very pretty.
Oh,
so
no.
Watch.
I don't know. I don't do the camera thing. Just do listen, yeah. But then I listen to my voice and I think that's weird, so I don't know. There's not much left, is there?
No. All right, well, we've run out of time, but the next week we've got a real fun one we're diving into the bowels again for a completely different reason. We are diving into the
bowels. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it'll be good. That'll be a good one as well. So,
all right, well, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.